Okay, everybody, just wanted to come in and give you a little bit of a forewarning. This is going to be very casual. Uh, Jared has offered himself up as tribute to us so that we can go over his blurb, which is really exciting. I have um, I have been handling blurbs for people for a while, and I wanted to add a little spice to our features when it comes to AuthorTube. I've been running sprints instead of doing much of anything else. And I was like, well, if I do blurbs, I want to see if I can get somebody on here that might be willing to go over their blurb with me. And we can, that way everybody can see how much detail goes into writing a blurb and also kind of hopefully make you less nervous about going through that process because all of us have to do it as authors. So, anyway, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Jared up here on the screen with me.
Hey,
Hello.
hello. Rachel, thank you so much for having me on here. I am so excited, and my community knows, everyone knows, I can probably talk about my blurb nonstop for days and never find the perfect touch. This was perfect.
I find that I always go back over my blurbs and I think, oh, well, I could have added something here. I could have added something there. And they're already published. So,
Mhm.
the good thing
A
about being an
writer's never done
indie,
rewriting, right?
right? The good thing about being an indie is that sometimes you can go back and change a few things.
Hmm.
You can change these things in your descriptions.
Hmm.
But when it comes to the cover, your cover is kind of something that you can't change easily. So
Yeah, I mean, once
you
you
gotta
launch
be
the cover,
careful.
I mean, I guess unless you do like you kind of have to do the cover relaunches through, I guess, special editions, and the
Mhm.
different versions. But you're right. Once you launch the cover, like that's the cover that people will generally know it by.
Yep. You
Hmm.
have to pay extra money to get anything else done to it. So just be very aware of that. So
Hmm.
it's really important that people take their time and actually get the blurb that they really want, but also a blurb that's going to hook readers.
Hmm.
Because like we were discussing before, the live went on, it's the cover art and the blurb, a tagline and blurb that are going to make that reader decide whether or not they're going to get the book or not.
Hmm. Completely agree. And this is what I tell writers all the time, right? If I think the thing that people really need to invest in is that cover design and editing. Now, obviously, it's interesting because I never think about investing in the blurb, but after speaking with you and seeing what you do with your books, I highly recommend investing in help with your blurb because if people don't like the blurb, they won't keep reading, right? Cover design, you got to pay for cover design. You got to pay for the blurb, and you can do blurb services very cheaply from what it sounds like, which is awesome. And
Mhm.
then editing, of course, which editing tends to be the pricier of them.
But it's very worth it.
It is highly, highly recommend.
We released our books
Hmm.
because we were just, on a shoestring budget, and we just wanted to go ahead and get them out there to say we got it, and it was kind of a boost to our own
Hmm.
confidence that we actually got stuff out there. But then when I was able to then reinvest in something, I chose
Hmm.
editing, and that's the reason that we had to go back and redo a few things on the books.
Mm.
But
No, that makes sense.
it's just very, very important.
And
If you can
I
get
think
it
it's
all
that
up
trade-off.
front, get it all up front.
I think it's trying to understand that the trade-off, right? If for those of us when you're investing money in your book, where do you invest the money? Because
Mhm.
like you could find so many places too, and that's always the challenge, right? If people don't read the book, if the blurb isn't engaging and it's then people don't choose to try out chapter one. Chapter one isn't good, people don't read it. If the book itself
No,
is not edited and there's mistakes, they don't read book two. So it's all such like a cyclical process.
it is. It is.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we've covered what we're going to get into today, I want to give you a chance to explain to everybody who you are and what you're up to.
Hmm. Awesome. Welcome, my friends. For those of you who don't know me, I am Kauffman. I'm on a mission to do a couple of things, but generally I help writers with the process, lifestyle, and mindset of being an author over on the WriteNow channel. I have been a writer my entire life. And I spent many years balancing a day job and trying to do writing on the side as a freelance ghostwriter. And I want to say about a year and a half ago, I finally decided I hit this point where I was just super miserable. And I finally decided I had had enough and I wanted to be a writer, pursue it full time. So I essentially restarted my life and started this writing venture where I challenged myself to write every single day for a year. That's how the live streams came about. And now over time, we built up this super cool WriteNow community. And it was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. I now do book editing and writer coaching. And it's just been an incredible experience. Getting to meet people like yourself, Rachel, has been very rewarding. So that's me.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
As all of you know, I am Rachel D. Adams on the books. My co-author is Dawn McClellan for the books that we've released so far, Urban Fantasy, Paranormal Romance. And I've actually started the side business for Blurbs. And I also have a kind of a impromptu advice column on Substack called Aggressively Helpful Writing Advice. I did that because I saw things happening in social media land and thought, maybe, you guys don't understand everything about what's going on when it comes to indie writing and publishing. You are seeing just the best, most wonderful parts of it. And I decided I was going to write this to let people know, hey, here's something that might go wrong and how to fix it. And hence I wound up with Blurbs. I want to thank everybody that showed up and everybody that may show up for the replay. I've got a Twitch channel that is feeding into my comments over here and also our YouTube channel. I've got links listed below for both me and for Kauffman. And we've got, and I will probably add to that too, if he has any more that he wants to share. I wanted to get on this here. Laura says, I worked on a blurb for a query letter for my vampire romance. I finished draft 1 of the book and wanted to make sure it was hooky enough and focused on what I wanted before diving into draft 2. Yes, you always want to make sure and you also, if it's a series, in my opinion, if it's a series, you kind of want the hooks and the blurbs to flow. That's just the thing that I've decided. Other people may do something a little bit different, but I see that the most successful blurbs out there are usually the ones that keep the flow going when it comes to a series.
That's actually kind of interesting. Thinking of series, Rachel, and this is a question to you, something I've thought through. Do you generally recommend that blurbs should be adjusted or have a different tonality for a book of a series as compared to a standalone?
Yes, actually. So a standalone, you're wanting them to enjoy that book in particular, whereas you're hoping with a series that you can get them to keep going with your series.
Even if only the one book of the series is out so far.
Yes.
Okay.
You need to prepare for that. I also recommend something that I've noticed a lot of traditional writers have been doing for years, and that is making sure that you have a small series blurb at the end of your main blurb for that book.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't even think about that, but that makes sense.
If you don't have to include everything, you just include at this point you're taking the reader out of that blurb world that you've had them in, and you're letting them know there's a series. This is what it's called. This is what it actually is like. And I noticed that when I was reading your synopsis and some of the other stuff that you provided for me, you actually already have that. You may not know
I just don't think I have it as part of the blurb.
Yeah. But when it comes to that, especially the description, I know that a lot of people are hesitant to put that on the bottom of their blurb, on their back of their book. I do it because I want people because I go to a lot of events. So I have that. And so that way they can see it at the bottom. But even if you don't do it there, I would suggest you do it in the description. wherever you're
Okay.
putting your
That makes sense.
description, basically do it there.
Yeah,
Um,
Rachel, I don't know if you remember, or if you saw, I want to say last year, I think sometime in the fall, I did a blurb stream where we talked about, we reviewed blurbs, and we talked through it as a community. And we reviewed, I think, about maybe 10 to 15 or 10 to 20 just popular blurbs from best-selling books across different genres on Amazon. And what one of the trends that I noticed is, obviously every blurb kind of has its own style, tonally, which probably matches the book. But I noticed that some of the blurbs will start with like the editorial reviews. Sometimes you have the editorial reviews at the top. Sometimes they will have sometimes it's a reader review, or like a highlighted reader review, or a little bio about the author on the Amazon pages, which is what I thought was really interesting, because I had always assumed, oh, it's just the blurb about the book. Do you have any thoughts on that?
my thoughts on that mainly have been, and I'm glad you brought that up. As a reader, I don't care about awards so much as I care about what I'm about to purchase.
Okay.
So if you've got awards, that's great to mention, but I really want to be hooked first. I want to know, do I want to buy this book? And awards, I have found books that I've fallen in love with, not one award, never won awards. They may have an editorial review on there, which is fine, because that's another person's opinion. But at the same time, I don't take that person's opinion as much as I take my own opinion, and I want to see what the book's about. So I just want to, for me, I would caution people to make sure that your readers, or your potential readers, know what your book is about first and foremost, and then accolades. That's fine,
That makes
accolades.
sense.
So yeah.
So do you think it would work as a selling point if whenever I do the scarecrow blurb, and this is just something I've been thinking through, to include what I'm doing with the WriteNow community, since I essentially wrote Scarecrow through it, and I use it as an advertising of streamed 400 wrote this over 400 consecutive streams.
I don't know if I would keep that in the blurb. I would say that might be something for another portion of your book, especially if you're looking at ebooks where you can actually put in front matter and back matter into it. I don't know that I would put that in the blurb itself, or the description space. You've got to remember that as far as a blurb is concerned, when it comes to the physical copies of the book, you've got a limited space on the back of the book.
That's
You
a good
don't want
point.
to do it there.
I guess I'm like so used to looking at like the Amazon pages, but you're
Now,
right.
the Amazon description, maybe if you put a space underneath the series blurb, or if you even folded it into the series blurb to as an addition to that.
That's
This was this is part of this series, and it's dark fantasy in it, and it's got this and this in it. And so if you really enjoy this kind of thing, if you really enjoy Guillermo del Toro's work, or things like that, whatever style of dark fantasy you're going for, then give this series a shot. And you can always add to that, stating this is a book that was conceived and developed through the WriteNow community, which I formed while we were doing it. It's something that you would want to add in there, but be very careful with it. Make sure that it flows properly. It doesn't sound like you're trying to just sell. Not the car dealership situation.
That totally makes sense. That makes sense.
Because I have seen those car dealership situations, and woo.
So do you think that it's good to reference popular books as a reference for, like, oh, this book is like this meets this, and this is the type of experience you're going? Is that a good strategy?
Only in the bottom part, and I don't generally use it. I know that some people do, and they get they get good feedback from it, because
Mm-hmm.
again, people are trying to find a specific type of book that
Mm-hmm.
makes them feel a certain way. And so when they
Mm-hmm.
read that, they're like, oh, it's going to make me feel like I felt when I read that, or it's going to make me feel like I felt when I watched that.
Mm-hmm.
Great. That's it. That's what I'm looking for. But again, I would be careful about putting that on a limited space on your book.
Okay.
The description areas, that's what makes the description areas for different ebooks or different platforms, selling platforms,
Mm-hmm.
so nice, because you can add that to the bottom if you want to. Again, it's just a matter of wording it correctly so that you don't sound like a used car salesman that
Yep.
is
That makes sense.
desperately to get something. That's the big deal for
Mm-hmm.
me. That vibe, you don't want to go for that vibe.
Awesome.
All right, so Laura says, writing the query helped me hammer down what genre the story is, and writing the blurb helped me nail conflict and stakes.
Oh, I like
Very
that.
important, very important.
I like that.
Because you keep putting it off and you keep putting it off, and you're like, okay, well, I've got to get a query out there,
Mm-hmm.
and your query is going to be very similar. Your query letter is going to include several other portions, but
Mm-hmm.
you are going to include a small summary, or basically your blurb, that you're wanting to hook the agent or whomever you're trying to impress. I am just going to go through here and tell everybody hello.
Hello,
I wanted
hello.
to,
Oh, hi, Don.
so many people, and we don't have a lot of time, so I wanted to go ahead and just say hello. Any tips for writing blurbs for 2 characters? I always write blurbs for 2 characters. So,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I do. See, what's your opinion on first person blurbs? They are legit, especially if you write in first person. That gives your reader the clue of, oh, I'm going to expect first person. He's got Scarecrow eating bookshelves, cannibals, and flightless pixies. Oh my.
Rachel, on the stream a few days ago, I read an excerpt, but it was more like because I had just written it and I was trying to make sure that it matched tonally. And there's this really creepy section where the characters go into this like really warm, inviting room with this fire, and it's like the coziest thing ever. And they're kind of just watching this fire. And then as they're like talking, the fire's kind of entrancing them, but they don't realize that it's actually a trap. Like the pillows
Ooh.
that the crows eat is sitting on is actually like pulling him into it. Scarecrow's like sitting there and he sees drool, and then the bookcase tries to eat him. The pixie gets pulled in the fire, and then Scarecrow is literally like the last one there as all the furniture in it comes to life with these like ferocious like mandibles of death. And it's like
Oh
it's
no.
which leads into the chapter, The Village of Animate Cannibals.
That makes sense now, because I was reading it, and when you read something as just a description, you're
Mhm.
like, what did they mean by that?
I know. I love chapter titles, so I'm like I love trying to hook people.
Chapter titles are great.
Mhm.
I agree. I love doing that. Let me go back over here to Calvin real quick. What I can do is we're going to focus on Jared's today,
Mhm.
because this is about blurbing with his work. But I hope to provide you with links to other resources. I have my Substack available that I have written 2 articles specific to blurbs. And I also have author resources available about writing blurbs, including a complete presentation that I did with WriteNow. And I also plan on seeing today how we're doing this live and deciding for future reference how to do future lives. Do we do blurbing all the time? Are we going to do this every week? Are we going to do this every month? That kind of thing. Great. I'm glad you are happy about that. So my next question for Jared is, if he's the expert at his own work.
Mhm.
And that's the way that, even though people tend to get nervous about it, you need to look as an author at the fact that you are the expert of your own work. So just tell us a little bit about the story, your premise and main characters.
Mhm.
And then I will start pulling things up and seeing what we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting because I know I'm going to get to ask that question so many times in the future. And
Elevator pitch.
I know, right? And it's like, I feel like I don't have a good elevator pitch for it because my inherent default is like, okay, well, let's just go to the blurb. I'm like, all right, let me just like, I'll memorize the blurb eventually. And that's just what I'll tell people. I, I think the thing that I love about The Last Scarecrow is I hadn't planned to write it originally. I started it on the stream based off of a 2-page free write. I pulled a picture up. The thing it was like a field and I think there was a scarecrow. In actuality, I don't think it was a scarecrow. I think it was a tree. But that's what led. It was a 2-page short story about a crow landing and stealing a scarecrow's hat, and that evolved into the story itself. So I was like, I could go on. I mean, I think the best would probably be maybe what this book is about. I think would probably be the most accurate. I would say, what is The Last Scarecrow about? It's what happens when you forget that you're the last of your kind. The Last Scarecrow is a dark fantasy action adventure that unfolds in an era when the world has been destroyed by magic. Humanity is no more. Part 1 of the Dawn of Magic series follows Scarecrow across the lands of the last, a bleak post-apocalyptic landscape where many of the surviving animals, creatures, and beasts are what's left of their species. Experience new twists on elemental, light, and chaos magic systems. Expect mind-controlling plants worshipping the moon, animate objects with a thirst for cannibalism, animal tribes warring for illusions magic, weather gone wrong, tricks, traps, nothingness, and the first demon at the center of it all. This is the beginning of a dark, twisted tale that will challenge your beliefs, foreshadow your expectations, and take you on an unforgettable journey through magic, space, and time.
Wow.
I don't have. Well, Unknown, you've definitely come to the right place. Laura, is this middle grade? No, it is not. I would say The Last Scarecrow is definitely mature fantasy. It was like mature fantasy. Um, originally, I wrote a lot of the elements so it could be family friendly, and I think as the stories evolved, there's a level of scary. There's like a level of like thriller-esque tonality. Like, I wouldn't say there's a lot of gore, but I mean, from the section that I had just like read aloud, right? Heroes go into a room with a bunch of objects, and the objects are actually cannibals trying to eat them alive. So there's a lot of those things where I want it to evoke a type of fear, but then there's a lot of hopeful aspects to it as well. So it's definitely more for a mature reading audience.
So for a YA audience upward.
Yeah, exactly. I'd say YA upward. Absolutely.
But there's no when people hear YA, I know that a lot of times people hear that and they immediately think there's going to be part of it's going to be romance and stuff. And this is adventure. Mm-hmm. This is a fantasy adventure, a dark
So
fantasy
that's
adventure.
why. Yep, I always like to say that this is a dark fantasy action adventure with genre elements of science fiction, thriller, post-apocalypse, and folktale.
The folktale, especially, I love the fact that you've got so many different characters that are melding into this
And,
in
and
and out
that's
of
what I
it.
wanted. I wanted like, and people who come into the community, they tell me that the closest stories it has reminded them of is Wizard of Oz meets the Never Ending Story with like an undertone of the Labyrinth. And I wanted to create this like fantastical, creepy world with these characters you could get invested in, but where you feel like you always like encounter these really strange other dynamics, but it feels like they're part of this kind of like hopeless, this world that just feels very hopeless at the end of end of time in a sense.
Yeah, let me add to that legend. So that was the movie that caught my attention. When I was reading through everything, I was like, so Wizard of Oz, and definitely meets the Neverending Story. But then my brain was like, "Woo, legend!" because you've got this overarching enemy that is the big demon, idea at the end, the demonic idea that you've got to go up against.
I was like, I do not think I'll have to check that. I don't think I saw Legend.
Really? Oh my gosh, Tim Curry.
Yep.
And that was one of Tom Cruise's one of the first movies that he starred in. So
Really?
yeah, he actually
Ooh,
plays the protagonist. So or
OG
one of the
Tom Cruise
protagonists.
one. I'll check it out.
Sorry for any of you people who don't like unicorns. Apologies. I know Mama Maggie is.
Unicorns are great.
Yeah, directed by Ridley Scott. Exactly. So you've got some big
Mhm.
names in that one. But yeah, those three movies actually you added in the other one. So what was let's see. There was Neverending Story.
Oh yeah,
There,
so I think Wizard of Oz and Neverending Story are the two where it's
yeah.
like those ones
Those
I've been
really did that those were things that I thought about when I was reading it. So yeah, definitely.
and then I've started to get an undertone of the Labyrinth because
Mhm.
the Labyrinth has like this kind of like creepy
The world
supernatural
itself.
factor. What was
Yeah,
that?
the world itself
Hmm.
to me.
And I think when we think of the Wizard of Oz, I mean the book series Wizard of Oz is actually darker. It's a
Mhm.
darker world tonally. The classic Wizard of Oz movie was made very much more family friendly, but granted it became a classic, so it was the right
Mhm.
decision. Um, and then Neverending Story is this kind of like weird, strange, very strange universe. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's like horror or like scary vibes per se, but it's a definitely fantastical. And I think Scarecrow is a step darker, a step darker tonally because of the thriller esque nature of a lot of the obstacles they encounter.
Very
I mean, the
nice.
antagonist is essentially a demon, so
Yeah. So I'm just putting these up here. These I just wanted you to see all the work that he's already put into
Mhm.
his blurbs while we're talking. So I do have another question too.
Mhm.
When did you decide to what was the trigger that made you decide? Well, maybe this isn't shouldn't be so family friendly because
Mm.
there's a moment when you and I think for a lot of authors, there's a moment where
Mhm.
you're like, okay, I can either do this PG
Mhm.
13 or 18 or whatever you want to use for your rating. So what made you decide that?
Great question. So like I said, I started Scarecrow on day one of the Right Now streaming last year, January 1st. I want to say that I finished the rough draft in July. So it took me about 6.5 months of writing the rough draft consistently. And I only wrote the rough draft on stream. And I want to say it was around the midpoint. So I want to say that must have been about probably around March, probably April, I think, when I got to the midpoint of the story. And for anybody who's aware of the Scarecrow plot line, the midpoint, something very extreme happens, which changes the course of the character development for all of the major characters involved. And I realized when I like pulled myself back and like I had my roadmap for the end of the story, so like I knew where it was going. And I looked back on the first half of the story, and there were a lot of fun family friendly obstacles. Originally, the mind controlling plants was just like a field of like happy go lucky like plants and like flowers, and it was like kind of weird, but it wasn't scary esque. Same with the cannibal village. The cannibal village was originally a bunch of objects that were worshipping fire. And when I was thinking about tonally what direction I wanted to go in, um, I felt that if I was staying true to the characters and I was really staying true to the story that I wanted to tell, that it really needed to match a darker tone for it to really um, elevate and emote the best, or for me to be able to bring out the best emotion for this range of a character journey. And that was just like me personally, just like trusting in the story and trusting in the character development. And then I went back to my core protagonist journey. I'm like, what's the story about? And I'm like, okay, that's if the story is about Scarecrow going through this world, at least book one is about Scarecrow going through this world, and really uncovering and recalling his memories. I think the concept of memory is it it could thematically work for a younger audience, but I think it would resonate the most with a more mature reading experience. So that's really how I landed there with more of a young adult above.
Okay. I
Mm-hmm.
think
Did that
that's
answer your question? I was like,
yeah, because we had a shift too at one point, but it took us actually releasing the book and having feedback, unfortunately. But yeah, that's I'm glad that you came across that almost a immediately just almost a water in your face moment where you're just like, wait, this is going to get kind of creepy, man.
yeah, yeah. Let's see.
Mama Maggie had some questions here.
Let's see. A scarecrow seeking to destroy or escape the nothingness. Why is it such a big threat? What are the stakes? Oof. I love that. I love
These are
that so
all
much.
questions that I've already asked him too. So.
Yes. Maggie, what I can say is these are the right questions. The nothingness. Let's see. What can I share about the nothingness? The nothingness
Yeah, don't give away any spoilers.
Exactly. I was like, what can I share? So the nothingness is very ingrained into it's a I would say it's an extreme event that happens randomly and has been known to obliterate single characters or entire civilizations. It is something akin to anybody who is familiar with the Marvel series. Anybody who watched Endgame and Infinity War, the what's that? The dust moment where half the population gets wiped out. I forgot what that's called, but it's it's like
They
the
called it several different things.
yeah, but it's
The
that moment
blip.
when the blip, right? So that thing, it's kind of similar to that event, except it's a random world event. How do we see it play out into the story? I would say there's one instance of it that I can share where it's Scarecrow sees a background, sees a what was it? Not a Scarecrow sees how it affected a previous civilization. And out of nowhere, there's this full like thriving civilization of animals, and then the clouds in the sky open up, and a giant beam of light essentially just washes over the civilization in a matter of minutes. And then when it's gone, every animal within the civilization isn't there anymore. They've basically been disintegrated, leaving only like ash in its wake. The nothingness, and anytime the nothingness happens, the first demon always follows. So
Oh.
it's which is why the nothingness and the first demon are very much tied together, which is why the scarecrow has been tasked with having to take down the first demon, because the nothingness is basically being used to destroy everything, and basically to destroy life. And there is a lot more there's a lot more about the dynamics of the nothingness that is ingrained into the overarching series. So the nothingness plays a humongous factor in not just the book one of The Last Scarecrow, but the entire Dawn of Magic series as a whole. Great question.
That is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I've kind of, while we were talking, gone through to show everybody. Let me get this where it's on just one page. But all of the work that you've gone through on this blurb.
Let's see. Don was like, "Oh, nice, demons and creepy. Some of my favorite things in a book." Yes, you and me both, Don.
Yes. Yes.
I love that. Calvin's like, so the nothingness and the first demon are like day and night, one following the other. Absolutely.
Ooh.
Absolutely. And I think
There's
part
so
of the
many.
intrigue, I know, right? It creates so much intrigue. And that's kind of what I wanted with the blurb, right? It's hard for me to I didn't want to go in depth into what the nothingness is in the blurb. I wanted to use the nothingness as an intrigue factor. So, I mean, and I'm sure you'll be able to dive into this and tell me what you think, like if it works, if it doesn't. I would love for you to tear it apart.
Oof, tearing it apart.
Woo, I love it.
It is. It looks so good. I'm going to change out of these glasses because I'm
Mhm.
trying to get used to these glasses, and I don't think it's going to happen. My other glasses shine, unfortunately. So I apologize if I blind you, but I need to not be blind.
Yeah, and everyone can see I've gone through definitely many versions and variations of this blurb so far. This current version I literally just redid yesterday, so no, but this is the first time that anybody's seen it. It's slightly similar tonality to the previous, to version 4, but I felt like this one matched the character journey a little bit. Yeah, but I would absolutely love your thoughts on this, Rachel.
So I agree with you on keeping things vague when it comes to the nothingness.
Mm-hmm.
And because it looks to me like they've got so many other things that they are going to have to go up against, so many other antagonists.
Right. And I mean, like the biggest, I would say like the biggest obstacle throughout the first, I'd say at least the first half of the book, is the world itself.
So what you're doing is you're doing it right. To me, I like this because you're setting up. For one thing, I would use what you have on your summary, which I think I got rid of, as your tagline. The line that you had there in I think it was caps. And
I know what you're talking about. You're
let
saying
me
what
see if I can
happens when you
find
forget
it.
that you're the last of your kind.
Let me see if I can grab it. And that way people can see it. Here we go.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess that actually makes sense, using that as a hook in the blurb itself.
Kind of a hook. Because you're not really you're trying to hook. You're not trying to explain things with a tagline.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, it's different from an elevator pitch. I know that some people tend to want to put their elevator pitches on their book, but that's not necessarily how it needs to go. And then, awaken amidst wreckage of a forgotten age, Scarecrow, with memories mired, discovers a world crumbling under the nothingness. And the first question that my brain asks is, Scarecrow, is that a scarecrow or is that just a name? So that's something to think about.
Okay.
Under the nothingness. Now, when you mention the nothingness, and this is again why my brain went to the never-ending story, the antagonist that they're fighting against, one of the the major antagonists they're fighting against in that movie, in that story, is something like this. So my brain immediately related it to that.
Okay.
So you've got the name of it does wonders. So you don't have to worry about anything like that. Let me hop over here. See, we do have a question. Can it be overcome or will it overtake all?
And I think, Dawn, that is the right question to ask.
Yeah. So down here, that is really good. I love working with people. Let's see. Nothingness. Can the Scarecrow and his companions unravel their truce before they become nothingness? Or will the first demon plunge them into eternal damnation? I don't know, because this is the very first book, right? I don't know. When does the first demon make an appearance for your characters?
When does he make an appearance?
When do they know that it's an entity unto itself?
Sure. So I would say that the book follows, I would say, like a 4-act structure. I've divided each one into, I'm kind of renaming. Act 1 is book 1, 2, 3, 4 in the book. And I think I'm going to retitle, have the main novel, The Last Scarecrow, A Dawn of Magic series part 1. I think that's how I'm going to go from a naming structure. Okay. The first demon as the antagonist is introduced at the end of Act 1. Beginning of Act 2. So about, maybe what, 25% of the way into the book, as he's introduced as the big antagonist that you have to overcome or all is lost.
So 25% into the first book. Okay. So in that case, that makes a big difference for me on whether or not I want to introduce a character, an antagonist specifically, in the blurb. If it were a big bad in the series and they wouldn't be introduced yet, I would not put them in there. And
I would say that through the course of this series, I would say that the nothingness is what's going to play a bigger factor in the course of the series. The first demon will play a factor in the series, but not as much as the nothingness. The first demon plays the biggest role in Scarecrow's journey.
And are you clear as an author on when you're writing the book? Are you clear to your audience that there is definitely a connection between the two?
Between
the
demon and nothingness? Yes. Okay. Yes. I am clear. I do it through foreshadowing, but when I introduce the concept of the nothingness, I make it clear that the two are connected.
Okay. So I see that Mama Maggie's having fun with it too.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, I love it so much.
Yes, Atreyu. Wait to the never-ending story. Let's see. Working with me. Yeah, that's my girl right there. But it's a good catch and pull because you want to find out which one wins out. Awakening into a ruined world filled with amnesia. No, here's the problem. I have trouble saying amnesiac animals. Amnesiatic animals. See, and I'm college educated. So you don't want to go overboard with it. So Scarecrow starts a journey to discover his purpose in a land littered with fragments of tech that are by nature's fury and shattered by the nothingness. Those who lose their memories eventually fade away from existence. Traveling with an eccentric thieving crow, Scarecrow meets many bizarre characters. Whoop. A pixie who can't remember how to fly, a grizzly and a dragonkin. Together they have to stop the land from being destroyed before they succumb and forget who they are and why they are trying to save the land. Which that is definitely a summary and cool. My thing with is giving too much away, and also being sure when it comes to these that thank you, Mama Maggie, for this because I like some of these words too.
Awesome. Yeah, I think there's some I think there's some word choices and some tweaking in yours that I actually really, really like that I might actually adapt. I love that.
I like that. And the idea that they this part right here especially. Let me see what you have here. Can Scarecrow and his companions unravel their truths before they become nothingness, or will the first demon plunge them into eternal damnation? And
I went back and forth on damnation as a term, by the way. Because I know I know it's I know. I went back and forth. Originally I went something that wasn't using damn in it, but I don't know. I've gone back and forth on that a few times. I feel like
there's another word, I'm sure.
Yeah, I know I think that's the emotion that I want to evoke, but I know by using a word like that, it might put it into it might
invoke more of a religious tone to it that you don't want to, because this is dark fantasy. Yeah. Let's see. So together they have to stop the land from being. I would say these two mixed together would be fantastic. Can Scarecrow and his companions unravel their truths before they succumb to the nothingness, forget who they are, and why they were trying in the first place?
Oh, I like that.
Can the Scarecrow and his companions unravel their truths before they succumb My brain just decided it doesn't know how to spell succumb.
Yeah, and I like that. This one needs
To
to come too.
nothingness. Forget. I don't want to delete that right now. Forget who they are and I'm just going to write this in. And it's playing around like this. This is my fun. I like doing this.
I do too. I think this is awesome.
And what you do as an author, just, you've got your main set and you've got it saved so you don't mess that up. And then you get an extra page and you just start playing with it and start moving things around. To save the land. $10 words. Exactly. Eternal suffering. Oh.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Write that in there. Like them thick words. Okay, so together they traverse the lands of the last. I want to. Your blurb already makes me want to really get animated with it.
Ooh,
So
I love it.
That's
I love
good.
it.
Together they traverse the lands of the last, where each shadow hides a predator. Every sunrise beckons the moon, and hope lies like an unnerving melody of entrapment. I really like that one. So
I came up with that at the last second. I'm like, that's because there's a musical there. All right. I wouldn't say there's a lot of songs in it per se, but there's a musical, there's like a song in an undertone that pines, I would say, the world. And the concept is introduced in book 1, but it's explored more heavily throughout the series.
I like that. Okay, so let me just quick question. The word lies, has a double meaning, or?
And hope lies. Yep. Hope and lies both do have a double meaning, and that was very intentional. I went back and forth on whether or not I wanted to capitalize hope.
See, things like that, and I wish more writers would go lean into stuff like that, because things like that, when you have an audience that is really, really into the reading and really, they're there to work on a puzzle. Things like that really catch our attention. So,
and that is what I love. I love creating a reading experience that has a lot of foreshadowing and a lot of puzzle elements, so readers can go back once they read the book 2, book 3, and they're like, oh, he started placing those even in the blurb, right?
Right. Yep. Okay, so let's go back to this one. And I understand that I'm doing this backwards, that
you're all good. Do whatever your process works for you.
Okay. This is just like you said, this is kind of my process. Something caught my eye, and something and then Mama Maggie's words and then Dawn's words caught me. And I was like, this needs to go here. I like that. So let's see. Can the Scarecrow and his companions unravel their truce before they succumb to the nothingness, forget who they are and why they began the journey in the first place? How does that sound?
I like that. Let's say I forget and why they can't. Yeah, I like that. I think, and this is why I kept going back and forth, because the nothingness and the demon are they're two independent concepts, since the demon is really the antagonist and the nothing is a world event. So I kept asking myself, how much do I reference both of them throughout? But since we know hero antagonist, people are going to be intrigued by the nothingness, but I want them to be pulled in through this Scarecrow versus demon concept, since the demon is the antagonist. So I kept asking myself, how much do I bring them back in throughout this blurb?
Is demon your henchman?
Huh?
Is demon kind of like the henchman, the general? you know, in the army of, is he, like I want to say in like Lord of the Rings, you have
Mhm.
Saruman
Mhm.
and Sauron, and so
Mhm.
I'm seeing kind of this relation here to me,
Mhm.
at least in my brain. I could be completely wrong, so
Mhm.
correct me. That like the nothingness could be equal to Sauron, whereas your demon is Saruman, who is the one that is actually
I haven't had anybody
in
I
their
connected
face.
that character with Saruman. I would say Saruman. I'm trying to think like what Lord of the Rings character.
He's probably
Kind of
not
yes
that
and no.
high, but at the
So
same time, it's
yes, so the first demon I would say is a bit of I would say is closer to a wild card without any true allegiances, but all of his actions are, let's see, what can I say without giving anything away? All of his actions are both directly and indirectly related to the core conflict of the entire series. Less henchmen. So I would say like Saruman on. No, so I think I would say like Saruman in his like early days of first being an evil henchman.
okay. Will the first demon, and I also like, and I'm going to want to read this so bad because part of it is the fact that you coin first demon, whereas
Mhm.
everybody else is the last,
Mhm.
but
And
he's the
it was
first.
very, very intentional. This is the story takes place in the lands of the last, where right, it's most of the species are the end of their kind. So I wanted it to create intrigue of if everybody is the end of their kind, and this is kind of like an end of the world type setting, how come where this is the first? The antagonist is the only one who is the first.
Now this is something I'm just writing this in there. You can always
Mhm.
change that. I was just, but he's basically he has a found family, with
It
these.
is it is a found family. And I guess this is going to be a great question that I'll have for you, because this is really going to go more into what's that? I would say this will go into more like the second paragraph of the blurb. But I asked myself, how many of the main characters do I introduce? And I went with Scarecrow and the three biggest companions.
Mhm.
There's two relatively bigger companions, but they're more predominant in from the midpoint to the end of the book. But I feel like introducing six companions in the blurb felt like a little pushy.
It is a little bit pushy when it comes
Mhm.
to, you want to make sure that
I
goal.
felt like four was kind of push. Four was like that
Mhm.
max, and those are like the four biggest ones, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, so we're back up to of this. Um, I'm using the term that you used at top because
Mhm.
we may try to find a different term for that.
Okay,
So,
I
can
like that.
Scarecrow and his found family overcome the challenges of their crumbling world, or will the first demon plunge them into eternal suffering? So we've got to figure out how to combine. I would say combining those two sentiments right there, those two questions. Will they unravel their truce? What do you guys think? Do you think the audience is going to be able to capture who we're talking about if we just use pronouns at that point? Or we could put, will the heroes be able to unravel their truce before they succumb to the nothingness, forget who they are and why they began their journey in the first place? And then if you didn't like the idea of using the key kind of a keyword found family in there, if it just doesn't fit your vibe, then since we took companions out here at the bottom, we could actually make that into and his companions.
I like that. I was like, do they become a family? I mean,
because it's pretty early in the series, so
it is early in the series. I would say that there is a very notable plot arc about them starting off as individuals, it evolving to him considering them companions, and then evolving from there to them becoming friends. And that is something that I touch on. I think the climax on the end does touch upon the family concept, but it doesn't really explore it fully, because that's going to be a theme actually that's more fully explored in book 2.
Yeah. So you don't want to introduce things like that too soon, especially when in this day and age where there's lots of people who have fixed ideas about what found family is, or what a specific trope that they love is. And so that's the reason I asked. And I think that, I think you should go with companions if you're going to do anything.
What about friends? Do you think companions versus friends? I kind of went back and forth, because then friends insinuates that they're going to become close with each other, whereas companions still keeps it a little bit more.
Well, it depends on how far you want to go with the first book, because friends is something that you could actually save for the blurb for your second book in the series.
That's a good point. I like that.
Because at that point they probably have become friends, and you see them start to that bond. I believe, just from hearing what you've said and also reading the summary, that this entire first book is about them getting to the point of trusting one another to become bonded as friends. And that it will probably take going through everything, considering their entire world has just forsaken them, so to speak. So at least to me, if I were put in their shoes, I would have a hard time trusting anybody for a while.
Which is why Scarecrow is the notable exception to the world, because he's very overly trusting, and he is punished very severely for that, unfortunately. Unfortunately.
I understand where that comes from, though. I get that. I've seen that play out. So let me go back over here real quick. Don't want to overwhelm it. I like how you've got them mentioned, but you don't go into detail. And I've seen so many people try to go into way too much detail when it comes to side characters. You definitely want to keep it to where you're focusing on Scarecrow, and you are, and you're just mentioning the most important allies. And like you said, if the other ones don't show up until midway through the book, maybe save their spotlight for the next book, or when they're going to be more pronounced.
And yeah, I kind of went back and forth with their motivations that I mentioned. So like each of the characters, I added their motivation in this blurb, and I didn't have their motivations originally, right? I have Sharp-Tongued Crow lost without his younglings, the Pixie is lost without her kind, and the Grizzly Bear is lost without his soulmate. I didn't have those lost tags originally. Because I wanted that to be like thematically of like, oh, okay, that might evoke an emotion of that they're all lost.
Yes, I agree. I think that's good. I like that. And it doesn't work for everything. But in this case, I really, really like it, because it brings that that feeling, that emotion out in you.
Mm-hmm.
They're lost, lost, lost. So that's going to be the thing that binds them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason, again, they're companions right now, because they're bound by the fact that they're lost.
Mm-hmm.
But then after this book and having to go through the climax of this book
Mm-hmm.
and coming out on the other side together, then having yet another adventure that they're about to have to go on, that's going to actually turn them into friends, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So Mama Maggie asks, does the first demon have to be mentioned as the thing behind the nothingness, or should that be part of the hook?
That's a great question. I have gone
What do you
back and
think?
forth on this exact question about 100 times.
That's what I asked. That's why I asked him the question that I did earlier, because when I saw that there were two, and nothing wrong with having two antagonists,
Mm-hmm.
we do, but and I've seen plenty of other people have more than one antagonist, but that was why I asked the question that I did.
Yeah, and I would say for the first book, I would say the demon is the antagonist. I would say the demon is the core antagonist, and I would say the nothingness is a more akin to a world event.
You just took the words right out of my mouth on that. Wow. Yeah.
But
Okay.
like the nothingness in itself has such an intrigue factor that I know that the nothingness as an idea immediately hooks the reader, because it's a unique it's just a unique thing, and I know that I wanted to rely on the nothingness as a hook.
She also asked, how can they stop the nothingness and whatever is behind it if they are forgetting who they are?
And that's a real question
Is
now, isn't it?
that
Mm-hmm.
that's something you need to stay vague on?
How can
So
they
that's
stop the nothingness and whatever is behind it if they are forgetting who they are? Great question. That's explored very in depth throughout the journey.
yeah.
The
So that's
idea of
something that
memory and loss is explored very in depth.
that's something again that is going to be loss. I think that, and I don't know if you've got that on here, but the word loss,
Mm-hmm.
as far as
Mm-hmm.
perhaps something that you would put in the blurb portion, sorry, the series portion of the blurb, is that is one of the tones that you, or one of the themes that you explore, is loss.
Mm-hmm.
And so that could be something saved for your series blurb.
Okay, I like that.
So come on now. There we go. I just want to move that out of the way. And we've already used that. So I'm going to take that out. So here is.
And I do, and maybe this might actually be for the series one, because I know in one of the how the reader section, I know I included I think there's a paragraph about what themes are explored in the book. Let's see where I put it. And
I just don't want to scroll down too far in case there's something that I don't want to.
Oh no, you're fine. So essentially what it was, let's see, I'll drop it over for you on Discord. So what it was, and this was something where I talk about what themes are explored throughout the series. Let's see. There you go. I just dropped it over on Discord chat.
Okay.
I said that some of the major themes explored are magic and its consequences, identity and self-discovery, trauma and healing, resistance against hopelessness, environmental and ecological extremes, survival of the fittest, grief and loss, and kindness versus hate. Now, I don't know. I don't think like the blurb needs to have all of those, but I was trying to
No.
just give an idea of what types of themes are explored. And that was more for the website. That was more for the website's purpose.
Because, websites, you can do a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you want to make sure that what you're, again, on the back of the book, you've got a very limited space.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes to the description, you don't want to overwhelm people when it comes to what they're looking at. So
Okay.
I would say when it comes to these.
So you think just like stick to like 1, 2.
I would. especially for step into a spellbinding tale of mystery, magic, melody, memory, and mischief before it's too late. I don't know that those before it's too late. This sounds this part right here,
Mhm.
where you're stepping the step into the spellbinding tale of mystery sounds more like the stepping out portion of a series blurb, because you're
Mhm.
asking the audience all their questions
Mhm.
when it comes to the blurb itself about that particular story that you're trying
Mhm.
to tell in this book. But
Mhm.
this step into a spellbinding tale of mystery, magic, melody, memory, and mischief, which I love alliteration. Thank you very much. Um, is this to me sounds more like the next step, which would be the series blurb,
Okay.
because this describes the series, not
Okay.
just the one
Yeah,
book.
I actually that makes sense. So, yeah, okay, I like that.
And before it's too late, of course, that would have been for the book itself, but don't need that.
Okay.
That's definitely something I want to play around with a little bit more um, when it comes to fleshing that out.
Okay.
So, but let's see. Nothing is forget who they are and why they began their journey in the first place. I'm going to just toss this as an extra before it's too late down there, because that might be something you use in the next blurb.
Okay.
Or you may find it works up here somewhere. So, okay, so let's go back over. I just want to get my little checklist. I've got a
You're
little
all
checklist
good. And
here.
then, while you're pulling that up, I know Penumbra, Maggie asked another question. You
Yes,
said, is
I
Pebble really a
started.
friend or just an unreliable companion traveling in the same direction? I think I think Pebble is all of Scarecrow's companions are unreliable. They're all unreliable. Scarecrow himself is, in fact, feels very unreliable in a world that is very harsh, yet he's very, very welcoming, yet he doesn't really remember who he is. So it's a cast of unreliable characters, and the reliability is in the moments and the bond that they're building together over these adventures. Pebble starts out as an unreliable character, but um, I would say their motives, what they want, are similar. So she's more unreliable within herself because she's self-destructive. And that, of course, evolves throughout the course of their journey. Unfortunately, Pebble's self-destructiveness definitely has an effect on the other companions. But part of that is what makes the journey fun. Great question.
This last sentence here kind of
Mhm.
messes my mind up a little bit. So I was
Mhm.
wondering what we could do with it. Let's see. And even the strongest fade from the threat of the first demon. Are you trying to say they're pulling back, they're scared, or they literally fade for under the threat of the first demon? Maybe.
Great, good question. And even the strongest fade from the threat of the first demon. I think I was trying to allude to the demon's capability, suggesting either the nothingness or the first demon's other um, magical capability without saying it outright.
Okay.
But the ultimately the goal of it is to evoke clear stakes with how the antagonist, the first demon, is affecting the world. Because I've already touched upon the nothingness in the first sentence. So then I was like, okay, well, this has to be something that clearly speaks to the antagonist. So if you have a better recommendation for it, I'd be open to that.
Okay. Dawn has a suggestion here too.
Ooh, that's great. That's
Kind
great.
of, that's what I was asking. Do you think we could meld this together a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Announcing this of their shadow nemesis. Punch them. Yeah, that's really good.
The Scarecrow and his companions overcome the challenges of a crumbling world, or well,
Plunge them. Wow, yeah, Don, that's way better. With that I think Shadow Nemesis insinuates the first demon, since we've already mentioned that in the blurb without overtly saying
and
it. And I think that's
another
perfect.
thing. That's another thing when it comes to blurbs. If you've mentioned somebody that is an obvious threat in the first part of the blurb, then you can get away with something like this because your readers are going to understand that.
I really like that.
Let me replace that then. Will. This is the fun part, y'all. I love this part. Crumbling world, or will the? I just want to make sure I get it right. Oh, capitalize. The nothingness, because that's how important it is. It's or their.
Of their, or will their shadow nemesis. Let's see. Can come their crumbling world, or will the nothingness in their shadow nemesis? Okay. Overcome the challenge. Oh, okay, I see. Can Scarecrow and his companions overcome the challenges of the crumbling world? I would say overcome the challenges of a crumbling world.
Okay.
So that way we don't repeat the twice. Overcome the challenges of a crumbling world, or will the nothingness and their shadow nemesis plunge them into eternal suffering?
So what I'm asking, and what my brain catches on, is there. Are we talking about there as far as the nothingness, or are we talking about there as far as can Scarecrow and his companions?
I think Scarecrow and his companions. Can Scarecrow and his companions overcome the challenge of the crumbling world, or will the nothingness and their shadow now? Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Actually, it could technically the way where it's
it could be taken either way.
It could be taken either way, and it needs to be clear that it's the
nothingness shadows. It's the nothings's the shadow nemesis. We're right there on the edge of wait a minute. This is a little too far, but I like it. Can we get away with using the it's shadowed nemesis? Because at this point, people are just looking at the nothingness as a thing.
Scarecrow and his companions overcome the challenges of the crumbling world, or will the nothingness and its shadow, or will the nothingness and their I feel like it might be stronger if it can be tied into the heroes, because I think that there probably references the heroes, but I mean it could reference the nothingness as well, but I think tying it into hero versus villain might be stronger, but I don't know. I'm actually, I could go back either way on this one.
This is going to be one of those situations where it's the author's choice. So yeah.
I don't know. I'll put up a poll. This is if there's ever something where I'm not sure and I could go either way on, I just post a poll and see what readers would like. Okay.
All right. So let me cut that, and I'm just going to put it down here with the rest of the stuff we've cut in. There we go. And then I'll just highlight this to be sure to have you come back to it and go, what should we do? And this is one of those situations where sometimes it's good to put it through. I know the tools, some of the tools that are available, like Pro Writing Aid and stuff, see what that opinion is. Also, fellow authors. Ask fellow authors, what do you think? What do you think that this sounds like? What do you think this would be? So let's see, like that. This is fun. To be honest, I suck at it.
You've also heard some really great advice. I wouldn't say that you suck at all. You've offered some great tips.
Is there a time limit on how long it takes for the forgetting to happen?
There is not. It's random.
But
there is actually a rule. There is a rule. There are actually rules to it. But the reader doesn't get to understand the system or the rules till later in the series. but for the purposes of the first book, it's a random effect.
Do we want to use dying instead of crumbling up here?
Scarecrow with memory, it wakes to a world crumbling, to a world dying under the nothingness. Well, I mean, dying definitely does evoke a little bit more. Dying definitely evokes more emotion. It absolutely invokes. And I think dying works as well. Let's see. Scarecrow with memory discovers a world dying under the nothingness. Does dying sound as where with my discovers a world crumbling under the nothingness, a world dying under the I think crumbling sounds better, but I think dying evokes more emotion.
Decaying, collapsing. I've decided to pull out my magic thesaurus.
Let's see. Wakes to a world decaying.
Don't be ashamed of using tools.
Yeah, no, I was like, yeah, I know. Usually what I'll do is I'll go to ChatGPT. I'll pull in the clip of the sentence and be like, give me 20 different word alternatives. To a world decaying,
collapsing. Also, the reason I wanted to do the crumbling is because we are using crumbling further down. But at some point, because we're describing the world in both places, so we need a different word to describe the world. And I just want to make sure that because of how, like Maggie's saying, the constraints of time make the issue of resolving the nothingness so much more pressing that we want to make sure that we're putting that desperation into the wording.
That makes sense. The constraints of time. That totally makes sense.
So a word that really evokes that emotion of you're really, really into despair, I think you put despair and hope and
the world despair world.
Yeah.
All right. Here's the 10 alternative words I got from ChatGPT.
Let us have it.
Imploding, shattering, disintegrating, decaying, which we had thought of, withering, deteriorating, fragmenting, eroding, dissolving.
I like withering.
Well, I kind of like withering too. Scarecrow with memories mired, wakes to a world withering. Yes, that uses alliteration. Yep, yes, withering.
Withering.
Yep, I think because the withering plays into that wakes to a world withering. And I'm always a fan of if you can play into, I'm always rule of threes. Alliteration works very, very well as a memory trick.
Yes.
With memories mired, wakes to a world withering under the nothingness.
I love it.
Yep. Yes. To a world withering under the nothingness.
I highlighted Scarecrow earlier just because I was letting him know that when I first read it, I didn't know if that was a person named Scarecrow or it was Scarecrow. So that's going to be something. I think that
his name is Scarecrow because he doesn't remember who he is.
Right.
So for all intents and purposes, he is Scarecrow. He goes by about probably 10 to 15 different nicknames throughout the book based on who he interacts with, though. So I very intentionally have a lot of characters call him a lot of different things.
So we've got, I like this. This is explaining things. This is you're introducing your characters. So you've got your world, you've got your main character, you've got your world, you've got your side characters that are important to the plot. Then what they're doing. So what dangers are lurking, what the impending doom is for it. And let's see, you've got down here, when you've got your questions, you're talking about what they need to do to make this work, and also the possible worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got everything here now, and it brings us down to the questions and then the series blurb to introduce, let people know who are reading your blurb to begin with, hey, this is going to be part of a series,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what the series themes are. Again, okay. Truth is, to your questions earlier, I prefer not to mention other people's work,
Mm-hmm.
but that is a marketing, you can use that as a way to market to other people. I saw it being used in PitMat all the time,
Mm-hmm.
because they've got a limited amount of space, and they're trying to get people to understand what their book closest resembles.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think that
Yeah,
that's more of a if
that's why I've
you.
gone back and forth, because like when I say The Wizard of Oz meets The Neverending Story, that those are two very fantastical worlds, but very different vibes tonally.
Instead of lost, perhaps wayward companions.
I think wayward can work. Can the Scarecrow and his wayward companions overcome the challenges of a crumbling world? I think that could work. Can Scarecrow and his companions and his wayward companions? Scarecrow and his wayward companions. Scarecrow and his companions. His wayward companions.
It's a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Fade. No, I think that I really like withering. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got some from Maggie. The great forgetting began with a flash of light, leaving the land in ashes. It was called the nothingness, because that was the fate of those who forgot. Last scarecrow, a thieving crow, and blah, 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 blah. An odd assortment of mythical and mundane begin a desperate journey to discover the truth behind the nothingness and stop it. But how can Scarecrow save a land almost lost? Are you sure you're not good at this?
I know,
I
Maddie.
think
You have some really great ideas.
I love the ideas, man. I really do. How do you start to write a blurb? I actually start with what you would think of as an outline, just basic outline. I want to know the main characters. I want to know what their world is like, or what their problem is, what their scars, what what they're dealing with. That's in this book plot, the main plot, basically. I want to
Mm-hmm.
know the inciting incident. If you need to mention the antagonist over what they're dealing with, then there's that. Uh, Once you mention the inciting incident, then I want to go into questioning what they can do about it, and what the worst case scenario is. And that's just the basics, down to just a outline. It can become more in depth. It can stay right there. If you've got more than one main character, or if you've got a love interest, then you are going to obviously have a couple more lines there to describe them too. But that's your basics, at least to me, um, that get people hooked into the book. And then you go
Mm-hmm.
back, and once you have your basics, do what we're doing,
Mm-hmm.
which is going back and making sure that you really are hitting the emotions with the words,
Mm-hmm.
and that you're not over educating your audience on stuff that they don't need to know.
I think the question that I've always asked myself with blurb writing is, how do I get a potential reader to feel something in 3 to 4 paragraphs? And that's, if you can get them to feel something,
Mm-hmm.
they'll be intrigued enough to read chapter 1. And I think that in itself is the challenge. Present Scarecrow is more of a linchpin character versus a group of characters. Yeah, in the original versions, of the blurb, I focused more on Scarecrow as a standalone. But I I think by leveraging the friends and making it feel like more of a group dynamic, I think it makes it feel more like they're all lost together.
Mhm.
And I think that works a little bit stronger, but I'm open to adjusting.
When I'm looking at this, because he's set it up with the word lost so many times with the different people,
Mhm.
it really, and also he's mentioned in the very first paragraph here that, nature's elemental magics are in check, creatures lose their minds, even the strongest fade from the threat of the first demon. So that tells me that they're walking through a world where this is going on all around them.
Mhm.
There are sad stories and tragedies happening all
Mhm.
around them because of this. So yeah, that's powerful.
Mhm.
So this is how I do it. Also, another way that I can come up with something really quick is the elevator pitch. The reason it's called an elevator pitch is what are 4 sentences that you would tell someone in an elevator to get them to read your book. You only have enough time from entering the elevator to exiting the elevator to
Mhm.
get them to read your book. So what would you say? And that's how you come up with an elevator pitch. But if you take that and then you expand upon it, because you're touching on main character, main plot, what could possibly go wrong? You know?
I I also think Maggie, Mama Maggie, I think you're more of a pro at blurb writing than you recognize. You just said the three
Absolutely.
P's: trauma, tragedy, and turmoil. Like that's a great way to frame it. Withering, yep. Withering was the way to go.
Yep. We got past that. I'm going to skip a little bit. I want to wave to those. Let's see. There's James coming in. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Aw.
Leaving likes and love, Gwenna. And then the world is forgetting how to exist. Ooh,
Yeah, a world forgetting how to exist. That is the truth. That is the truth.
me? So we've got all the conversations, and
Mhm.
everybody is so sweet to welcome everybody and talk to everybody and saying
Aw.
hi to everybody. So I love this community.
Appreciate you, Darkwood. Welcome, welcome.
How are you doing? And this is where he was talking about trauma,
Mhm.
tragedy, and turmoil. And you don't want to give away too much. Just a point of advice for me, and I know that some people may press against this, but if you word your blurb so that people know that everything's going to be fine, or that they're actually going to accomplish what they're setting out to do, then you're not hooking your audience, because your audience wants to find out if they make it through. They want to find out if there's going to be a happily ever after. They want to
Mhm.
find that out by reading the book. But if you let them know right up front, that's going to cut your audience down quite a
Mhm.
bit. There are only I would say like maybe 20-25%, if
Mhm.
that, of people who want to read your book that will still read it if they know
Mhm.
they already know what the end's going to be.
Mhm.
Is it the same with two main characters? Yes. Uh, I have to go into, well, different books in our series have different main characters, and I've also written, especially romance. And it could play the same for any kind of genre. If you have two main characters and they get equal time, equal point of view, they're both very important to the plot, then you kind of want to, in your blurb, give a little bit about both, whether that be in
Mhm.
the same paragraph or separate paragraphs within the blurb. Usually I try to limit it to two sentences, though. Usually kind of like a this is what's happening in their life. This is who they are. This is what's happening in their life right now. And then maybe a third sentence, especially if it's a romance, how that relates to the other character. Because you want to kind of foreshadow a little bit with how
Mhm.
that relates to the secondary character. or the not secondary, but the other character.
I think great examples is probably look at stories that look at book blurbs for that have large casts of characters and see how it's done well. Like I would go look at like Game of Thrones. How was that blurb done when there's literally like 20 characters? There's a lot of characters, obviously. Wheel of Time, great fantasy series, focuses like probably one of the most notable for having the most cast of characters over the 14 books, but there's still a core protagonist. So I would always reference cast of characters, and that gives you an idea.
Yeah, Ed Greenwood, R.A. Salvatore, a lot of the fantasy, if that's what you're leaning into, they have a large chorus of characters. And that would, if you get several comps, whenever I have worries about anything when it comes to a blurb, I will go and research the comps for that book. Go to one of the local bookstores and look up stuff. So you've got a bunch of books, and you may look weird for doing it, but that's okay. Put all the books on the table and start looking. Okay, take notes. This is how they did it. This is how they did it. This is how they did it, and see what appeals to you, and see what you think. Because if it appeals to you, like as a reader, then it's probably going to appeal to the audience.
I absolutely love this, by the way. For if they fail, all light, all love, all life will be consumed. We have the same stakes. I like that.
Shall I write that down?
Yeah, let's save that. That's awesome.
If we fail. Because I don't know if that would be good here or if it would be good on every one of the books in the series.
Yeah, it's actually it's interesting.
I like it. Action. Hello.
I love that.
Hello
Ben,
there.
you're welcome. That's awesome.
It is very similar to a synopsis, but you're not giving everything away. Whereas in a synopsis, you are actually giving a lot more detail. A blurb is there to hook. It is part of the marketing of your book. And you, for instance, like Laura was mentioning earlier, doing the query letter, there's a lot more to that query letter than just the blurb. And some agents prefer synopsis, and some agents prefer to see what you have as a blurb. So yeah, it's a little bit more detailed. Synopsis more spoiler-like, blurb spoiler-free and intriguing. Yes, that at least that's the way I see it. There are other people that do this that are like, well, this is Apple from The Lord of the Rings. In the very last paragraph, it says, "The Lord of the Rings tells the great quest undertaken by Frodo and the Fellowship of the Ring." And
I'm like, and
now I want to know. And keep in mind, a lot of the things that you see, especially on things like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, they've been altered through the years too. So we'll see. Gandalf the Wizard, the Hobbits, Merry, Pippin, and Sam, Gimli, the Dwarf, Legolas, Boromir.
It just names them all. Interesting. Yeah. And that's over the series, which I mean that makes sense. I mean, that is what the trilogy does follow all of them.
And that would be the trilogy blurb or the series blurb that would be at the end, because that's the very last paragraph. And it's you're basically telling the people, this is what you'll find in the series, and versus just the book. And then the big part of it goes to the book. Yeah. And when you're talking about the blurb, not the series blurb, like what Kauffman's got on here, he's describing, he in maybe 4, if not 5 words, this part right here, he's describing each of one of the characters, but it's not taking up a lot of space. You see, he's chosen his words very well. And I would say that, well, But when it comes to the Lord of the Rings, everybody knows. I wouldn't say everybody knows the story, but in my brain, everybody knows this story and everybody knows who they are. But yeah, like how he breaks it down: the wizard,
Gandalf the
hobbits,
wizard.
the dwarf, the elf. And so it's kind of like he's also kind of describing them, but doing it with as few words as possible. I've tried writing a blurb, but I keep spoiling the first volume, while the second volume blurb is much better. But you're learning. That's just a proof that it's like, okay, well, this is what I did the first time, but now I know to do this, and you get better. Same with writing anything. You're getting better. I love the demon art in the corner.
I do too. I think your brand and your logo is really, really cute.
Yeah. So I wanted a combination of demon and dragon, and that's what I got.
I want that too. Did you hire an artist to create that?
I gave them the idea and let them go for it. And so now I've got that on all of my merch. So if you're interested in merch,
I want to create something like that for Scarecrow, probably like a chibi. It's called like a chibi, right? Yeah, it's that type
chibi
of
art or emote art too.
I want to create something like that with Scarecrow. I don't know. I don't know which character is the best to advertise. I mean, Scarecrow's obviously his story, but readers seem to attach the most to either the pixie or the crow.
It would be a dope painting. It would. I would like some of the scenes.
Just do one that has all three of them. Maybe if I can create a chibi art that is able to leverage all three of them, that'd be cool.
Right. So because they're naming each one of them, but that's the part that I'm like trying to decide if I like or not, as far as writing a blurb. It's like, well, do you need to name all of them except for the ones that are the most important, or and also it depends on. I would also tend to lean toward the fact that the point of the Lord of the Rings was to prove that nobody was more important than anybody else. And that's why it makes sense to me. And I know you're not supposed to do this to Tolkien, but you're not supposed to try and figure out what he meant. But at the same time, I'm like, that kind of makes sense that they would be listed. All of them would be named because that was part of the point of the book, was that nobody's more important than anybody else in this fellowship. Do you sell it as a stubby? Just take my money. Not yet. Those are very expensive. So not yet. But I'll write that down as an idea. We sell them as everything else, stickers and then labels on stuff. So, and like, I can just imagine chibis of Scarecrow and all of them too, like, that would be so cool. But we've got some people that are pros at merchandising, and yeah.
Yeah, I've told everyone I'm the Scarecrow. I haven't revealed too much of the Scarecrow strategy, but I've developed a 5-month launch strategy. And in a perfect world, I would love to launch Scarecrow by summer. But I'm right now probably about 35 to 40% to the second draft, and I have to get to the draft first before I can feel like I can commit to dates.
Yeah. All right. So back to this. I'm going to finish reading this really quick. So yeah, I get you on this. It's an example of a big cast that feels a lot different than Game of Thrones in terms of how important each character is. And that's I think that's part of it. It's like, for me, my brain immediately goes to, but they're all very important. And he wanted to make sure, or whoever's writing the blurb wants to make sure of that. With some blurbs, if they list a lot of characters, it becomes a checklist of finding them when you're reading the book. Yeah. And sometimes you'll get disappointed. I mean, just from personal experience, I'm like, well, where is this character? That line is from several of the prophecies in Relic of Time War, but my version of the nothingness is called Devourer or Devouring Entity. Oh, okay.
I like
this
that.
right here. For if they fail, all light all love and all life will be consumed. Is that from yours? Because it's a wonderful quote.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely agreed.
All right. So what we've got here, let me get back over on this side so that I can actually see what we've got. What happens when you forget what you're, wait a minute, let me go back because see, I already stumbled. What happens when you forget that you're the last of your kind? Scarecrow, with memories mired, wakes to a world withering under the nothingness. Nature's elemental magics rage unchecked. Creatures lose their minds, and even the strongest fade from the threat of the first demon. Haunted by loss but driven by hope, Scarecrow sets out to find the truth, joined by unlikely allies, an eccentric, sharp-tongued crow lost without his younglings, a flightless trickster of a pixie lost without her kind, and a lovelorn grizzly bear lost without his soulmate. Together, they traverse the lands of the last, where each shadow hides a predator. Every sunrise beckons the moon, and hope lies like an unnerving melody of entrapment. Can Scarecrow and his wayward companions overcome the challenges of a crumbling world, or will the nothingness and their shadowed nemesis plunge them into eternal suffering? Will the heroes be able to unravel their truths before they succumb to the nothingness, forget who they are, and why they began their journey in the first place? So, that is what we have for the main blurb. And then at that point,
Question for you, Rachel. Does it feel repetitive having two questions back to back at the end of that blurb?
what do you guys think? I really like asking both of those questions because of the way they're worded. But I do remember also mentioning that if we could get it all together, that would be good too. I have made blurbs where there are two questions at the end. And I've also made blurbs where there is a statement and then a question. So what do you think? Let's see. There's a lot of chat going on, so I'm going to apologize. I may skip a little bit of it. I like multiple questions in my own writing. Kauffman has noticed that.
I mean, because this is my when I think about questions, when we ask the reader multiple questions, we're almost programmed to psychologically forget the first one when we're asking them a second and a third question, because when we ask a reader a question, the reader now wants to know the answer. So now they've stored like, okay, I want to know this answer. If you follow it with a second question, the first question loses relevance. So then you ask a third question. Now, unless you're doing all three in a way where they're kind of all asking the same thing, which is why I generally try to stick to a rule of threes with questions. But it could just be a personal thing. But I remember learning that a while back.
Okay, let's see. Because I'm very visual, so and I always equate this to one of those puzzles where you're moving the pieces around.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, but
So that
it
makes it
sounds so good. The thing
bulky.
is that the questions sound so good. Like both of
Mhm.
those paragraphs sound like, so I don't know if it might just be a me thing. I mean, Rachel, what do you think? Do you think that the ending with the two questions works?
Can Scarecrow and his wayward companions unravel their truths and overcome the challenges of a crumbling world or forget who they are? I honestly like both questions separate
I do too. I was like, I think
because
trying to
when you
combine it.
try to combine it, it becomes so heavy.
Yeah. I was like, let's just leave it as is for now. That's fine. I'm fine with that. I think what I might do is I might maybe think about if there's a
Actually, let
way
me go
to.
back and then that way I can just cut this and I can put it down here in the notes for you.
Yeah, okay. Something to think about.
Mhm. Something to think about. There we go. And this is something that I go back and forth on a lot of times. That's the reason when I do blurbs for people professionally, I automatically tell them, "Hey, you're going to get 5 drafts from me.
Mhm,
Like it may only take 2, but it's gonna it sometimes can spread into 5 drafts
mhm,
before we figure it out. And it's like I'll give them an idea, then they'll send what they think back to me, and then
mhm.
and it's kind of a back and forth kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, I like that.
Okay, so I don't want to go too far back. What type of blurb would people be more enticed by? One that provokes intrigue and something interesting about the lore of the book's world, or something original that diverges from the usual tropes seen in the book genre? Tricky question. Tricky question. So, in my experience, it depends on the person as to whether or not they like a blurb, the way it's toned. Some people really relate to characters. So, if it's a blurb that's character driven, that's got the characters mentioned and really makes them feel something for the character, that's a win. If it's because they really like dystopian stuff and it happens to be a world that is dystopian, there's that. So it kind of depends on your audience as to whether or not which one you should go with. I like invoking intrigue and also making sure that the audience feels for the characters. And I like Kaufman's version here because that's exactly what he's doing. It makes you intrigued about the world and also worried about the characters because of
Mhm,
what's going on. Now, and the other part of that question is, should you do something original that diverges from the usual tropes seen in the book's genre? Be careful of that. It could be a good thing, or it could blow up in your face. Because if you're writing a specific genre and they have specific expectations, if they see something different as an audience, as readers, fans of that particular kind of genre, and they see something different, then a lot of times they don't pick it up. So, just be careful. Do your research about the genre that you're writing in and the type of blurb that you're trying to make. Help me figure out what blurb. Yep. Your audience is your main thing. I'm not sure I read a book looking for the payoff from the blurb, so I'm not sure how important that is in the instance versus in the prose. And again, that's it. It's you are the audience in that case, and you are the type of person that doesn't put as much into the blurb, but most people do. They've got thousands of books that they can choose from, and so if a blurb catches their eye, then that's what they're going to go for. And I know some readers who absolutely will just ignore the blurb for the most part. They'll just kind of scan over it and then they'll go and read the first few chapters before they decide if they're going to get it. I think the second goes better with the last paragraph. Have you considered mentioning the first demon as the master of the nothingness? Ooh.
Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting way to frame it. Some would definitely think so.
If there is a question in a blurb, I normally take that as the book focuses on the character's growth, but I'm a weirdo. I don't think you're a weirdo at all. I think that that's a good point, actually. And that the author is really, really intent on making sure that you're interested in finding out what happens to the characters. 5 blurb drafts? Okay. Which one is it? Do you think there should be more or less? Hello. How are you doing, Tracy? This is one of the blurbs of the book. Okay, so fanfictioneer guy gave us a blurb. Jonah Emmett, young Anthropian, finally makes his way into an Anthropian-friendly university. However, his life takes a drastic turn when his enigmatic human roommate Calvin Brooks accidentally lets his guard down. Oh. I don't know how work get started. But yeah, you've mentioned the name and you've mentioned their world as it is right now. So what is the strength of your story? Also, if your book is really intriguing, go with that. If it's got a lot of trope subversion, you might be able to lean into that maybe. Yeah, it's when you're writing your blurb, you are marketing your book. So that's the important part to remember. Love your book babies. Yes, love your book babies, but this is part of marketing. And until you see it as part of marketing, it's going to be a challenge for some people because they keep wanting to put everything. They want to tell everything. They want to make sure you're excited as they are about their book baby. But it's part of marketing. So you've got to make sure that you're honing in on what's going to market your book best. And that's really important. Intrigue is much more effective. I like a mixture of both. So that was what I went with mine. And I think that he's got a good job here on both. And I just love, I love these two right here.
Right. I think because it's the characters, right, that we connect with.
Yeah. No, that's not what I mean. Okay. Where are we at? Having a good blurb is great, but what is at stake of being forgotten? That's what Kauffman was talking about. He's worried that the second question will overshadow the first. Yeah.
There's truth to that.
So that's what. That. Yeah, that's what we were working on, and he's gonna work on that too. So Don mentions reading this makes you wonder who's actually controlling the nothingness and who is pulling the stunts.
I love that. That is the right question to be asking.
Yeah. So that's why I was talking about, it's kind of like the question I said to begin with. It's like, do you want to leave that vague? Do you want to bring that out? And I like taking and just leaving the first demon there first, because then you're like, well, ooh, okay, who's that? What's that? And they're two separate threats, but is it makes your brain go, oh, well, is it separate threats? Are they working together? What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
There's that intrigue.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's a book that needs a blurb that is specific to those specific tropes and that specific audience too.
Oh my God, Maggie just said. I just saw Maggie's comment. I am a chaos scribbler. Go for it.
I am a chaos scribbling reader who will read the second to last chapter first.
I could never do that. I could never do that. That would bug me so much. It would like bug me to the core because I'm like have to read things in sequential order. I would it would just make me cringe on the inside. because I'm like, well, now like I want to follow them from the beginning. That cracks me up.
It might have. I don't control YouTube, and YouTube can be weird. Also, Twitch can be weird, and I'm using StreamYard, and it's just a whole bunch of weird. But if you're interested, Kaufman's links are below in the description. And
Yeah, I would say fan fictioner. If you're trying to get a hold of me, I was like, I'll admit Twitch is probably one of my my weaker ones. But even as I look at whispers, I don't see something from you. I'd say actually, fan fictioner. If you want to get a hold of me, you should come join the Discord. Come join the WriteNow Discord. It's the Discord community is actually super active. You can send me a DM, and that's usually the easiest way if you want to chat. Let me go pull up the Discord invite, and I'll drop it in the chat. Actually,
okay.
Rach, I'll give it to you.
I was about to do that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, you're ahead of me.
Yeah, because I'm part of the membership too, and it is great. Let's see, edit invite link here. Let's see if this works. Oh, it's not working. Max number of uses not limited.
I just dropped it in the private chat for you.
Thanks, because this is not working. It may just be a Discord setting. Okay, here we go. Now, hopefully that shows up on all places. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and let Kauffman do his outro because we are coming up on the 2-hour mark. And I don't need to keep him for too long.
All right. All right. So I think I put together the last 2 sentences of the series blurb. Can you tell me what you think of it?
Okay.
It is, so I think this is the thing that goes at the end of it about the series. A Dawn of Magic series is a dark fantasy action adventure story that explores freedom, loss, and the consequences of magic being unleashed into the universe. Step into a spellbinding tale of mystery, magic, melody, memory, and mischief.
That's beautiful.
And I think that's good. Like I had never thought about doing a series thing like that at the end, so that's awesome. But yes, Rachel, thank you for today. This has been phenomenal. Everybody in the community knows I could probably talk about my blurb and scarecrow endlessly forever. So like things like this, like I love so much. And I really value your expertise. I know going through this blurb with you this past couple hours, it's really made me think about a couple of the logistics and fine-tuning things and making sure that these sound a certain way. I know by the time I launch Scarecrow, I'll probably have gone through this blurb hundreds of times because, like you said, a blurb is a marketing tool. And I want as many people to read The Last Scarecrow as possible, which is why the blurb, every single word has to be go through with a fine tooth comb, so to speak. And I feel so much better about the blurb today after we've gone over it and talking through some of these factors. It's like so much better than the previous version I had. So I just really want to thank you for that. This is really, really awesome.
This is one of the dream blurbs for me to work on because you've already got everything just right there, and it just a lot of it just needed new words and just like that puzzle, moving things around a little bit, and there you go.
I'm glad that I was able to set an easy one for this the Blurbing with Rach series, which I think this is awesome, by the way. for those, I know we have a lot of my community in here. I'm so happy
Thank
to
you
have
for
all
coming.
y'all. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all the ideas. Thank you guys for joining. I'll be back right now. We'll be back going live in actually a couple hours because we got writers group tonight. So we'll be back on the channel with the other writers from the community. If y'all want to come join, shoot me a message. I'll send over the invite link. I think last week we had 9 writers on. So our Wednesday night writers group is pretty active. Rachel, I hope you'll join us one of these Wednesdays.
I hope I can make it there.
Just come chat about writing nonsense. I know James joined us a couple weeks back and it was awesome. So
we try to join as much as we can, but it's a matter of having everything else going on at the same time, you know.
Yeah, that's always the challenge, right? You know,
but I'm looking forward to the critique. Yeah, if you guys don't know, you know, Right Now group, they do critiques too, so they can help you out with things like that. It's a wonderful community, and I hope that you will look into it if you haven't already.
Yeah, for anyone who's not a channel member on the Right Now channel already, our next critique group, which is not going to be a live stream, it's a private group. Our next critique group is this Saturday, the 15th. So it's right around the corner, where you can bring an excerpt of your story to the critique group and get feedback from other writers. So right now it's the membership is $5, which for most content creators, critique groups are usually like $50+ for like these things. Like this, $5 is extremely underpriced.
Yes.
So I highly recommend people sign up now because that's this Saturday. Rachel, you're going to come join?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I have a Beltane project for the anthology. Woo! And I'm finishing it up hopefully tomorrow, and then that way it'll be ready for you guys to read. And it's flash fiction, so it's not big.
I mean, that's perfect. It makes it easier to digest in such a short period. So that's awesome.
All right. Well, thanks for being here, and we're going to end it there. You guys, please be sure to visit the links that I've got in the description and also in the chat. And I enjoyed this. This was our first time doing something like this, and that makes me feel more confident in possibly doing this more in the future. So the form is in the description, and I will reach out to anybody who wants to also become a tribute. See you later.